I, Mona Gupta, welcome you all to day 2 of the Faculty Development Program on post-COVID-19 media, entertainment, and digital consumption. And the theme for today's session is role of social media as an aggregator in post-COVID scenario. During COVID-19, the world discovered that social media is a great way for individuals and communities to stay connected, even while physically separated. And social media has exploded as a category of online discourse where people create content, share it, bookmark it, and network at a prodigious rate. The 5 key characteristics of social media, collectivity, connectedness, completeness, clarity, and collaboration, lend itself to be used increasingly to support crisis management functions like these. So before we plunge further into this space, I would like to invite our Dean of the Department of Journalism and Mass Communication, Dr. Charulata Singh, for the welcome address. Ma'am.
Thank you, Mona. As we move on to day 2 of this important FDP, very pertinent issue which we are deliberating on post-COVID-19 media, entertainment and digital consumption. I think this is a very relevant issue, and we have various sessions on different topics in this FDP, and I will VSJMC from WIPS from various other institutions and universities for this day 2 first session which we are conducting. And on behalf of WIPS family and all the faculty members and Professor Siddharth Mishra, who's the chairperson, I welcome our guest, our speaker for this session, Mr. P. Vidyanathan Nair, a renowned professional from Indian Express. I think, and the topic which we are going to discuss is combating the influence of social media on print media. I think it is again a very important aspect in the recent developments which we are witnessing, and like regularly teaching to the students, and I feel that such FDPs are very important, especially for academia to know what exactly is being done in the industry in order to bridge the gap between the industry and academia. So, the various changes or challenges vis-a-vis the print media and the social media, when we talk about whether it is about the flow of, sources of information, which I feel is totally reversed. The print media is picking up the stories from the digital mediums, whether there are challenges about the validation of the information. There is challenge about the objectivity of the news. Many a times biasness or misinformation, all these things are there, and above all, I think the question of ethics. So we see the compromise on the ethics many a times nowadays. So these are, I think, various challenges and various changes which are happening. And I think no other best person than Mr. Vidyanathan Nair to speak on this important topic and enrich our faculty with his, deliberation and his insight on this issue. Welcome you, sir. And yeah, thank you.
Thank you so much, Professor Charulata Singh. My warm wishes to Professor Siddharth Mishra, who's the chairperson. Hi, Praveen, all faculty members, a very good afternoon. I start with a sense of trepidation when I, address academia, because, I'm not really an academician. So I've been a journalist for about 25 years, started working very early in my life when I was in college in RDC Nagpur. But there are, several aspects. Let me just quickly, one is, of course, the topic itself, the influence of social media on journalism. The impact is profound, good and bad. I will leave it to the judgment of all who are in this session to figure out, what needs to be done probably to address some of the anomalies which social media presents before us. So, say much of my career I have spent in the Indian Express. So let me very quickly uh, tell you about what Express stands for. Express, of course, everybody knows that it is probably one of the few newspapers in the country which speaks without fear. Uh, it is journalism of courage. That is the motto of the newspaper. And over the years, it has braved government opposition in terms of many things. Its electricity was shut off during emergency. We couldn't print, and in protest, the Express was probably one of the two newspapers which ran blank editorials, which also kind of didn't give in to the censor demands of the government at that point of time. Well, that is something which is often talked about, but holding on to that challenge of always speaking truth to the power and holding people accountable, those people who are in positions of power. When I mean positions of power, it is not necessarily the government alone. It is a opposition as well, because today the opposition, given the federal nature of a democracy, the opposition is also holds power in several states, and the leaders in opposition sitting in Delhi also wield enormous power in terms of even deciding chief ministers of states, in terms of their influence over a large section of the population. So I think when I say speaking truth to the power, it is speaking truth to both the government, and which is the establishment, and the opposition as well, because opposition is also powerful. Uh, One is that, of course, and Express over the years has, at least over the last 5-6 years, or a little more, we have identified two legs of journalism which are so critical when we look at say mainstream journalism. uh, it's a very no nonsense newspaper. I don't know how many of you actually get the physical newspaper at your residences, and whether you have stopped because of COVID. But the two legs of Indian Express journalism are investigation and explanatory. Basically, i.e., to us, it stands for Indian Express, and it also stands for investigation and explanatory journalism. Because today, telling facts, what is traditionally described as news, as being on the spot, recording the news, presenting the facts to the people as you see it, for them to read and experience or figure out what happened actually, that alone may not be enough for readers to be more informed. So we do a lot of investigation. I think investigation is the core of journalism, to my mind, because that requires huge effort. So be it, say, a Panama Papers investigation which looked at offshore accounts, which requires, so who spends resources on investigation? Investigation requires hours and hours and days and weeks and months together to eventually arrive at a set of stories which have a profound impact on society, on governance, on they have an impact on how governments across the world frame rules. So say, for instance, in Panama Papers, Indian Express devoted three senior editors to work on the investigation for 7 months. Three senior editors getting paid for 7 months, decent salaries. Express pays decent salaries. Uh, Three senior editors spending 7 months not doing anything else but just poring over say something like 11.5 million leaked documents, 2.6 terabytes of information, which you get it from some source in a very secure technology platform. Which organization kind of devotes such luxury of time, uh, space which is actually the end result of this investigation, and the resources, which is salaries to journalists. Very few organizations in the country or in the world today devote such resources of time and money to senior reporters or editors in an organization to work on such projects. So month after month, year after year, week after week, Indian Express kind of identifies what are the things that we report about, what are the things that we need to investigate about. Do we investigate more about corruption? Do we investigate about corruption in the intersection of politics and business? Do we report about the state's hard hand in different places, be it invocation of the National Security Act against several people in states, be it also the high-handedness of technology platforms which are deciding who can say what, whose truth is the truth, because the truth today is a big casualty. We all know that social media gives you a lot of information, but does it always tell you the truth? Is there a lot of misinformation in that? How do journalists respond to such misinformation? Do we just become Twitter journalists, looking at Twitter all the time and trying to ascertain, kind of figure out what the facts are? Do we do that as journalists? Do we do original reporting? Do we do original investigation? What are the things that people should be interested about? What are the things that people should know about? So these are questions which are constantly kind of talked about in our newsroom. So even when it came to something like, say, so and there are problems in all of these. There are problems of governments which are very sensitive to criticism. The revenue model of newspapers, you all would know, is such that it depends on advertisements. Still, bulk of the revenues for Indian Express, the revenue pie itself might be very small for Express, but bulk of the revenues do come from advertisement on the print. And the first casualty by anybody who kind of finds our reporting and our investigations objectionable or does not unsavory to their politics, the first thing he does is cut this tap of advertisements. So it has happened with Indian Express in the past. It happens now also. But how do we respond to that? But isn't at the end of the day, for Indian Express, I think protecting democracy, which India probably is the only country which has a democracy from since its birth, because if you look at literature on democracy, or say papers on democracy written by stalwarts, you will find that there are very few countries in the world which have had which were as poor, as illiterate, or as large as India was in the 1940s, to adopt to democracy as the mode of governance, as democracy as the pillar by which the country should find its soul. So I think that aspect, protecting democracy, is one of the critical, most important, or the important objective of good journalism that Indian Express practices. So one, as I said, is investigation. We continuously try to figure out investigation, and the choice of issues in investigation is also a matter of constant debate, constant discussion in the newsroom. So should voices of people who are minorities, who are less in numbers, who are not heard in the mainstream, should the investigations be focused on that? Or should the investigations be focused on, say, economy, business? Because economy, business also pervades, is a critical element of the polity, and at the end of the day, a country grows only because of its economy. So do we try to find out whether people are using their powers for their political powers for business purposes? What are the shades of gray in this nexus of politics and business? We also look at, say, society through the platform of technology. What does technology do to society? The fleetiness of websites, and the short memories of people while they are looking at news items, sifting through news items in on social media or on digital platforms. So there are many things which the newspaper kind of continuously strives at. So the other bit of journalism which Express does, of course, is explanatory, where we try to find the correct context and perspective to issues which are very, very, say, which dominate in all these spheres, be it politics, business, economy, society. So we kind of try to explain things to them. So if there is a need for a caste census, whether there is a need for a caste census, why is it never done? What are the implications of that? Why are political parties averse to doing it? Was it ever done before? So this is the kind of explanatory, and then we kind of bring the historical perspective to this. So that's probably one reason why Indian Express is read most by civil service aspirants in India. If you look at my newspaper, you will find a lot of institutions which train civil servants as advertisers, which is very interesting for us to figure out. And we devote sections of the newspaper, like we have a full explained page every day. Probably Indian Express is the only newspaper which has 2 editorial pages. If you look at the only other newspaper that comes to my mind is Hindu, which has 2 editorial pages. So the distinction between news and views, that is another aspect which people kind of don't really understand when it comes to journalism, because news is reporting of facts by giving the context in which these facts are happening, and then views are people's views. And Express, to my mind, and to my say, having spent more than a decade and a half in Express, it carries all views. So we will give space to the right, to the left, and to the center. So there is space for everybody who has to voice an opinion, because what is free speech at the end of the day, where at a very personal level, not necessarily my newspaper, I think free speech is very critical. And what needs protection, probably, if you look at purely in philosophical terms, what needs protection is speech which is not liked by many people. So that probably also needs protection as much as, and what needs amplification is voices which are not heard, voices which are suppressed because of many reasons. It could be social capital reasons, it could be, say, pure financial capital reasons. It could be because, they are a small percentage of the population. So speech also gets suppressed because of many reasons, not necessarily in the control of the people whose voices are not heard. So that those probably also need amplification. So I think Express tries to do that bit of explanation also when it is looking at topics. So having said that, say, in the last so Express, to my mind, in a nutshell, is investigation, which is very critical, and explanation, explaining things to people, giving the context and the perspective. So those are the pillars in which Indian Express stands. Then coming to what has happened over the last, say, year and a half, when we were struck with COVID. So that has been probably the most trying times for all newspapers, particularly for small newspapers like Indian Express. Indian Express, you would realize, this is probably the only business which the promoters of Indian Express have. They have only the newspaper business. There are media organizations in our country which have power plants, which have coal plants, and there are media organizations in our country which take equity stakes in hundreds of companies. So, all this, when media organizations branch out into different businesses, I'm not saying that there is definitely a conflict of interest, but then certainly there are pressures on that organization which are much more than a pure bred news organization might face. So Indian Express will not do any other business but selling of newspapers, selling of its, it has, several newspapers, of course, Indian Express, and it has Financial Express, and it has Jansatta. Then we are the largest, Marathi newspaper, which is Lok Satta. So the only business which Indian Express has is the news business. So to that extent, the levers which those in power use against media organizations do not. Thankfully, Indian Express is spared from those levers which governments can possibly use against media organizations. There are many things which still government gets back to us. What is most interesting about Express is also that the government responds to issues which are raised by the Indian Express. So, say for instance, be it the COVID coverage of Express, be it say news reports which are critical of the government in Uttar Pradesh, the government's concern will also always respond, because there is a section, or that the government would always think that if Indian Express is saying certain things, might as well take note, because I don't think many people in the government would see Indian Express as biased towards one against the other. So in my limited experience or interaction with those in power, from both the sides, from all spectrum of politics, I have realized that there is this tacit kind of acknowledgement amongst political parties or politicians that Indian Express would write without fear and favor, be it the ruling party or be it the opposition party. So that gives us enormous strength and clout to write what we think. But that doesn't mean that there are no pressures in the organization. There are pressures in the organization, and there are ways to tackle those pressures. Be upfront with those in power. Tell them what you think about particular issues. You give them space. What is critical in all our reportage is also accuracy and fairness. So before writing a series, there are 1,000 pair of eyes which go into those series, and especially when these are series, investigative series, which are critical of the government. You have to go through them. You have to ensure that you don't go wrong on even the minutest of facts. So there is, checking, double checking, 5-6 layers of editors looking at each of these aspects when we are looking at critical articles about anybody, and always giving them a chance, or always getting back to them for their comments, to incorporate their views, to be fair to them. I think that is something which I do not find so much in, say, many other say probably in regional newspapers, which are also hugely circulated, 10 times more circulated probably than the Indian Express. So COVID was a big blow to Indian Express. On last count, in my organization itself, 6 people died. So one is the health aspect of COVID, which has hit journalists as much as anybody else. So many people down with COVID, and you have to take care of them, and they can't stop reporting. You go to hospitals, you meet COVID patients, you are there wearing PPE suits when you are getting inside hospitals to find the conditions of the hospitals. So all these things happen, and not like unlike, say, a television media, which can put all of this on television and and make a sound and noise about it, Indian Express doesn't have that luxury. It has to do it via very factual reporting, through words, through storytelling, and presenting, and always taking the views and opinions of those who are managing these operations. So and on top of that, the revenue sunk for Indian Express. As you would know that Indian Express is kind of a not a hugely circulated newspaper. It is not as large in numbers, say, as the Times of India or the Hindustan Times or let's say a Dainik Jagran or even Bhaskar. We are a small newspaper in terms of circulation, and so the ad revenues of Indian Express are hugely impacted in times of COVID when nobody buys the newspaper. Despite scientific studies saying that hard surfaces do not infect you with COVID, still people did not buy newspapers for almost a year. And till now we are roughly, I would imagine, about 50 to 60% of the pre-COVID levels of circulation. So in many newspapers had to kind of retrench people. Indian Express also had to cut salaries. So we were working under very trying circumstances, but not letting go of the spirit of journalism, even in these trying circumstances. Correspondents worked, reporters across our country kind of had fanned across, doing kind of reportage from the ground at low salaries. So there is a spirit of, say, public good in Indian Express kind of journalism. Personally, I think that journalism is public good because it informs the larger set of readers about what is the truth vis-a-vis what is the alternative truth, because there are so many truths kind of flying around in social media that now all the social media platforms are trying their best to find out what is truth, what is a fake news. Truth also becomes a fake news. Fake news gets circulated as truth so rapidly, like we have all seen WhatsApp, Twitter, Facebooks. But over a period of time, also in the last decade, I have seen that the trust factor has increased more in hardcore mainstream journalism. Or I would rather put it the other way, the trust factor in social media has come down very sharply in the last 10 years, because in social media, anybody can say anything with a tinted lens. So, and for people who think that that is the truth, they will lap it up. So these are where confirmation biases set in. Like say for instance, what do you do when you are looking at say for instance, if I'm looking at news saying that the time is over for reservation, there should not be any reservations now. I'm being a little provocative just to give a sense of what social media does, what say a Google and a Facebook and other things do to you. So if I think today that the time is over for reservations, we should stop reservations now. 70 years, 73 years of 74 years of reservation, and that has not really worked. So do we need reservations today? Then I start doing a Google search, reservation required or not. Then you kind of get 5 set of different articles, then you pick one of them. So if you think that you don't need reservation, you'll kind of pick up a article which says why reservation is not required, and you'll find out have certain set of arguments. So when you're looking at all of this in Google or in Facebook or reading Facebook posts which are like this, Google is continuously figuring out it is looking at all that you're doing on you are leaving a trail behind. So Google and Facebook and all the social media intermediaries they are continuously looking at what you're doing 24 hours in a day, and the next set of articles will be based on what you have looked at. So that's where the confirmation biases set in. You try to look at stories or views or opinions based on what you think is the right thing. So you might think that reservations are not required. Somebody else might think that reservations are required. So Google and Facebook have the power to give you the same set of news from different places, feed it into your screen. So this, whether it is good or bad, is a question that we all have to answer as a society, whether we should look at others' views And if you are looking at others' views, the most difficult thing for all of us, I think, are when you look at others' views, even if you find logic in that, you will still think that my view is what I would want to believe in. I don't think that person's views matter to me, irrespective of the fact that he provides facts or evidence to the contrary. So, do you want to do that? Is a question that all of us have to answer. But in all of this, I think when we are using technology platforms, what really happens is, given the biases that all of us have, technology platforms are very smart enough to kind of figure out your biases, keep telling you the same stuff, and truth becomes a casualty. So no wonder, Times Magazine, I don't know whether you would recall, in 2017, Times Magazine actually had a cover which talked about whether if truth exists at all. So is truth dead? That was the big headline which they carried in the March edition of 2017 in red and black. Is truth dead? They were talking about a time of Trump, who used digital media to great success, and what we saw, the results of Capitol riots, and all these, then the Twitters and the Facebook saying that, putting labels on Trump's posts, they, even banning Trump. But Trump had used all of this pre-2017 till the time leading up to the elections to the White House. So I think in what social media is trying very hard today is to regain the trust, which is very difficult. But do you let social media to decide what is truth for you? If say, for instance, a politician says that so and so thing has happened, if social media puts a question mark or a label, do you give them the power to decide what is truth for you? Those are also questions which we need to answer. Giving the sovereign functions of a state to technology companies, is it something which you would want to happen in a country, in a democracy, is another question that we have to answer. So coming back to COVID, COVID dealt a big blow to newspapers, and this whole acceleration to the digital media happened in the last 2 years. Like, like Indian Express was going digital, most organizations were going digital, but the pace at which we kind of adopted to digital media has been phenomenal over the last 2 years. So today, not many would know, but Indian Express is the #1 newspaper in the digital with a digital presence. If you look at Times of India, it has got various properties. But it is the #1 when you include Economic Times, Times of India. It has got Magic Bricks. It has got all kinds of businesses all put together. It would have a huge viewership. But as a standalone newspaper with digital presence, Indian Express still becomes the #1. So that is the leap that we have taken in terms of pushing our digital initiatives in the times of COVID. And that requires also a lot of training of reporters. For instance, I'm not sure whether you would know something. There is a technology called Chartbeat, which Express has taken to, which tells you online at any point of time how many people are reading the Indian Express on screen using the internet. So it tells you, like, say this particular story is being read by 1,400 people across the country. It also tells me the geographies from which people are reading a particular news item. It tells me how many seconds a person reads that particular news item. So it gives me great granular detail about what is happening in the online space. It also tells me whether this person has come to the Indian Express through a Google or a Facebook link, or it has come to the she has come to the Indian Express directly from the site, like typing www.indianexpress.com. So there are phenomenal tools. It is a very expensive tool, but it is a very expensive tool, but we don't have a choice but to adopt to this technology, because this is what will give us information about what readers are reading. So for instance, if Indian Express, for instance, does not have any great presence in, I'm talking in terms of Indian Express because I know a lot about Indian Express, what is happening. So I'm involved in all of these discussions internally, but I wouldn't know what is happening in Times of India. That's why this reference to Indian Express. So in my newspaper, I know at any point of time, there are, say, 14,000 people who are reading a particular news item, and of those 14,000 people, 6,000 have come from Google, 3,000 have come from Twitter, 1,000 have come from Facebook. Somebody have directly logged into the website. How many of these are can be potential subscribers? Whether they are spending 30 seconds in my news item, whether they are reading 200 words in the news story, or they are reading 1,000 words, they are spending more time, 5 minutes in the news in that particular page. And if they are clicking to another story in the newspaper in the site then. So I get all such granular detail through tools like these, which are nowadays thankfully available, because that, and it also helps me experiment. Say for instance, there are many stories. So for instance, I would say that, say Indian Express doesn't have a Delhi Times or a HTCT, which gives you all this glamour kind of stuff, the stars on the front pages, and all this stuff, which many of my own sources tell me that the first thing they pick up in the morning is the Delhi Times, not really the Times of India. So it is so pervasive that at times you feel that you're putting in amazing effort in an organization. You're spending some 14 hours a day trying to figure out what is relevant news to consumers, what is it that you need to inform the readers about. But then in the morning, what the reader does is pick up page 3 and look at stuff, spend his 15 minutes on coffee over that. So these are also debates that we have. So these are things that we need to figure out for ourselves, whether we should spend time in, say, Bollywood. I think we should spend time in Bollywood, but what kind of stories we should do on Bollywood is for me to decide. I really say Express wouldn't want to do, what clothes somebody is wearing, or, that kind of stuff. Somebody has gone to meet somebody, that is, salacious kind of journalism, which we really don't want to do. I think, we are not cut out for that. We would rather avoid it and spend our time doing something else. So even we cover Bollywood. So if you look at our weekend pages, there is a lot of Bollywood, but it is more, say, more in-depth stuff on Bollywood. We would talk about societies through the we are probably the only newspaper which does film reviews in a non-partial, unbiased manner, where we spend our $350 to go to the cinema hall, watch the cinema, come back, and a reporter who's a very senior reporter who has written 2 books on films is writing a review. And the review is not about he said this, he said that, and that is what, keep guessing what is the end in the movie. That is not the review that we would do. We try to find patterns, we try to find its impact on society, we try to find whether there is a history to it, what lens it has taken. So we are trying to figure out films in all its vibrant, creative vibrancy. So that is something which we would love to do in Bollywood. That's what we do. So I think in trying to come back to the thoughts on social media, I think social media, I would imagine, for today, everybody has become a journalist. Anybody who's on the street can use his mobile for 5 seconds, put out a small video of somebody getting bashed, say for instance, and then saying that this man was getting bashed because he was faking his identity to show himself as a Hindu and putting bangles on women. That's a story in our paper today. I don't know whether you have noticed, about a guy in Madhya Pradesh who was thrashed by some people, and then a case against him, that guy himself was lodged, and he's been arrested. So so we need to, so the whole story, if I may say, originated from a Twitter small video somebody posted, making some making some qualitative comments on the person and posting it on Twitter. Now it is like, you may pardon my language, but it is like somebody coming in front of your door, spitting on the door when the door is locked and pushing away. What can you do about it? You can't really do anything about it. You have to open the door. By the time you have opened the door, tried to clean it up, the person is gone. So this kind of news is also like this. Somebody will come on social media, post it, and disappear. It is for others to figure out the facts of the story, the truth to the story. And by the time you have kind of discovered the truth to the story, the facts of the story, the fake story has done such enormous rounds in WhatsApp and Twitter, in social media, that has become the alternative fact. So now the fact is fighting the alternative fact. So this is the double-edged sword which social media is. But social media is also something which is remarkable in terms of, say, for instance, a Me Too movement, where people who were women who could not say things could put out stuff and lead to this global movement, global Me Too movement. Now, that is a weapon which social media is. And that weapon is a very potent weapon. If used for the right purposes, it can create a revolution, but it can also create such discord and can create such fake news that you are constantly trying to ascertain facts, and then by the time you ascertain the facts, put out in a newspaper, because Indian Express, we will not do anything online story, even though we push digital so much. Like our first stories are on the website of Indian Express and tweeted and Facebook before it goes on the print. So special stories we do kind of save for the print, but by and large, say 60 to 70% of our content is first put online. But putting online when you are fighting for time, when seconds matter, because the algorithms of Google and Facebook's matter, when Twitter's algorithms matter, which news should be put in the first 5 of the Google post. When you search for something, which are the first 5 items on the Google screen? So the fight for this has already begun as soon as something has happened. But for us to be fair and accurate is far more critical for us to go wrong by gaining time. We don't want to gain time and go wrong. We don't want to push out a story first, immediately to be first off the block and gain this huge traction to the news item or to the website, but then turn out to be found wanting on facts, or not having given the other person a chance to give his version. We will never do that. So Indian Express never does it. So we are late at times in the digital space, but we will always be accurate. And if we are wrong anytime, we will say that we were wrong and we have corrected it. So there is a continuous updation to it. But our attempt is always not to give that correction also. The corrections in my newspaper are seen as a blot in my career. If I have to carry a clarification tomorrow morning, I will see to it that that person is on my file. I'll say that, boss, this is a clarification you have made me carry, and I look so horrible in front of my reader today. So that is critical for every journalist. So that culture of ascertaining facts, being correct all the time, spending a little more time, even if it costs me few readers online, I think I'm willing to forego that. So that is but then there is always pressure. See, reporters are also, you would not imagine that the newsroom is always like a tinderbox. It is always under pressure. So many things are happening. We probably say, how many mainstream newspapers would have sent somebody to, say, Kabul? 2 days before Taliban entered Kabul, our correspondent was there. Shubhajit Roy, he's a very good colleague of mine. Praveen knows him. He was there in Kabul 3 days before Kabul was overrun by the Talibs. So who takes such risks? Whether the risk is worth taking, putting it out on front page, where I can take, Reuters, I can take, AFP, I can take an agency copy and do a story. But no, I want to send my reporter because I want him to see firsthand what is happening. I want him to tell a story of what is happening in Afghanistan by talking to the Afghanistan people there. I would spend my resources there. So if I have, say, for instance, during COVID times, if I have cut salaries, I, meaning the Indian Express, has cut salaries, it has never compromised on news gathering. The Express's news gathering expenses would have been the highest amongst all newspapers. We would have sent people to Northeast, we would have sent people to Jammu and Kashmir, we would send people to Kabul, we will send people to wherever it takes for a story to be told. So that is the investment which journalism has to make, which social media will not give you that kind of. Social media is churning out story after story by 1,000 people, which are not verified. It can come from a that tick marked verified handle, but is the news verified? You look at what the kind of comments people with tick marks make. At times you feel that such irresponsible comments from such responsible people who have a huge influence on the polity of the country. So these are issues. We struggle in our organization how to sanitize our social media presence. Reporters have views in my newspaper. They have very strong views on either side. Ideologies, like the best thing about a newspaper is it should be able to assimilate all ideologies. I desperately look for people from all backgrounds who strongly are ideological, because that's what makes it a very vibrant newsroom. Otherwise, we tend to kind of agree with each other on, and everybody agrees to one particular aspect, then there's no point in, bringing out a newspaper, right? You need to disagree. You need people to disagree with you, you need people smarter than you in the newsroom. You need people who completely disagree with you, who have a completely different view. You need those dissenting voices in the newsroom for us to have our heads clear, for us to kind of see their point of view. We never put ourselves in the shoes of, say, I would say, a very strong right-leaning person. We never get an opportunity to put ourselves in the shoes of a very strong left-leaning person or somebody who's at the center. So where do we get those things unless we have those people around us? So in my house, for instance, my father is a big, so much of it is all recording. So I'm tempted not to say many things because this is all recorded, and I would be able to freely express many stuff if it is not recorded. Because journalism, the newsroom is something which all faculty, I'm sure that many of you are journalists, have been journalists, and you would understand what happens in a newsroom. But there are many newsrooms. There are vibrant newsrooms like Express, where everything is debated, very hotly contested. People have extreme views, and they have solid arguments when they have those extreme views. How do you counter that as an editor sitting in the midst of them, trying to figure out what should be our 3 edits of the day? So one is, of course, the views of the people whom we give space, which are the edit and opinion pages. You will find that all kind of people, from Rakesh Sinha of RSS to Venkaiah Naidu, who is the vice president, to we also had the president writing for the newspaper, to to Mallikarjun Kharge or Veerappa Moily, to everybody has a space in my newspaper in the edit and opinion pages. But then there is a sacrosanct edit of the newspaper, which has those three edit pieces that we have on the left hand side of the edit page, which is the newspaper's view, which is a collective newspaper view on which the chief editor and the opinion editor and people who say that this should be the view of the newspaper. So I might have a very different view than the newspaper, which is fine with the newspaper. But can I put my view in my Twitter handle, even if I say that it is my personal view? Nobody distinguishes between P. Vaidyanathan Iyer and the Indian Express. having been with Express for 20 years, can I say that no, I have a different view of mine? So that is also under discussion and debate in the newspaper. Can journalists put their views, which are completely different from the Indian Express views, on their Twitter handles? That is a subject up for discussion in the newsroom. Can we do that? And if we do that, what are the repercussions? If, say, for instance, I'm just as a hypothetical example, if there are 5 reporters in a news organization who are constantly, say, writing against a particular political party, or have views which are against a particular political party, and if those guys keep tweeting this, and if as a newspaper I go and speak to one of the leaders of that political party, he'll say, "ये देखिए आप, ये 5 लोग के tweet देखिए." Can I ever expect an objective news story from your newspaper? He'll ask me that question, and it has happened in the past. So these are, to what extent can you talk about what you think about issues on Twitter or on social media for journalists? That is also an issue. That is up for discussion. This is also hotly debated in the newsroom. So social media, as I said, social media is a double-edged sword. It is hugely empowering because every citizen becomes a journalist. Every person has a view. So the best of journalists in India, if I say, I don't want to take names, but say, for instance, there are 3 persons who are very, very good journalists, who have had the breadth of experience, like, having covered, Northeast, Punjab militancy, to Jammu and Kashmir, or to Afghanistan, Pakistan. If there are, or the economy itself, if there are 5 or 6 journalists like that in India, if they put out a view, Twitter gives the right to any person to say something outrageous about that tweet. So I say, if I put out a tweet saying that, this reform is good for the country, somebody will immediately say, you are sold out to Congress, or you're sold out to BJP. So that Twitter gives you that power, right? It is an amazing power which people have, and they find hugely satisfying. I could not have told Vaidi that, boss, no, you are a BJP supporter or a Congress supporter, or you are sold out. Now I can tell him on Twitter, boss, aap to big gaye. But this is the power which social media has. Unbelievable. So while we are tweeting stuff on social media, we have to be careful. We have to base our views and opinions on facts. I can tell stuff with a remark based on what has appeared in my newspaper. I cannot tell that I voted for so and so. Can I tell my ideological leaning to a reader, because it doesn't appear in my newspaper, in my writings, because my writings are completely bereft of ideology? So should I say it out in public domain? Those are questions that traditional media organizations are grappling with. These are newsroom issues, which are very difficult issues. Or there is a counter argument to them. A journalist can come and tell you, I am working for, say, an Indian Express or a Times of India. Should I sell my soul to Indian Express or Times of India? Can't I have a view of my own? I feel differently from the newspaper's editorial view. Should I keep quiet? So is that freedom of expression? So there's a question to that also. These are issues which we grapple with, and we kind of, there are huge discussions, and there are, of course, we set limits to what extent you can, go about criticizing or making remarks against people whom you don't like, by saying that you are a reporter of Indian Express. Those are issues which we struggle with all the time. But I find social media over the last several years, I think my sense is, you might correct me, my sense is the trust factor on social media, when nobody trusts newspapers, do you think that people will trust social media? Because in social media, you'll get everything, all kinds of shades of news, right? And without any verification. So my sense is that over a period of time, the trust which audience has on social media is less. So nowadays, people like, you and me, of course, would talk about it. But, now I can see many people, like even my son would say, this is a WhatsApp university news. Matlab something which we talk to each other, we make fun of it. Ye to WhatsApp university ki khabar hai. So I think that is kind of, people are realizing that not enough hard work or not enough work has been done to present a fair and accurate picture of an incident that has happened in a remote corner of Ujjain, or say Pulwama. So that trust factor, I think, has gone up for newspapers. So I think the process which began in the 2010s, early 2010s, of people taking to social media in a huge, in a phenomenon, it's like a flood. Now that flood is no longer a flood. I think people have tempered. People have figured out that, no, boss, I have to read something which is credible, where there is a view, the other person's view has been carried, the facts have been presented, so it is not colored. So that bit people are trying to understand. But are they picking up the physical newspaper? I don't think so. Like your sons or your brothers, sisters, young children, I don't see anybody in that 18 to 34 age group, 18 to 30, I would imagine, picking up a hard newspaper. It is very difficult to hard sell a newspaper to these kids or to the youngsters. Nobody picks up a newspaper today, but they are consuming news on digital media, which is a great thing. My personal sense is that digital is the future, because you will have this 3,000 rupees ka smartphones, and it will give you, India mein वैसे भी broadband is free, internet सबसे सस्ता है, and news is also free. Nobody wants to pay for news. So but I think that will also probably change. News will command a premium. Credible news will command a premium. If Indian Express gives you X, for X plus plus, you might have to pay something more. For X plus plus plus, for X special, you might have to pay something more. So you will get X always, but the X plus and the X special, you might have to pay a little more. So I think those models are emerging everywhere. Many newspapers have already put themselves behind the paywall during the COVID times. Indian Express is still free, but I think it will be, I'm certain that these are being discussed in the newsroom, where how to build subscriber base, and that is also very important. So for instance, what is the challenge today? If, say, my biggest audience, say if it is in Bangalore for Indian Express, and we don't even have a physical edition in Bangalore. Well, this is something which is fact. I can tell you that Indian Express doesn't have an edition in South. After the Indian Express split, it split into two groups. One is Indian Express Bombay, and the other is Indian Express South. So Indian Express Bombay circulates in the northern parts of India. The Indian Express South circulates which is called the New Indian Express, which circulates in South and in the east of India. So we are not there in South. But my bigger digital readership is in Bangalore, which is quite something, which is very heartening for us. So what do I do to increase that subscriber base? So, and you will find it surprising that I've got 2 reporters in Jaipur, where we have a physical edition, but I've got 6 reporters in Bangalore, because I want to cash in on my Bangalore digital subscriber base. So I have hired 3-4 more people in Bangalore to increase local coverage, because I think now they are reading Indian Express. So let me give him some interesting stuff locally that is happening in Bangalore and in Karnataka. So maybe he will click to that. Maybe he'll say that, boss, no, I'm getting local news also in this site in Indian Express. So let me go there. So I think I'm trying to expand my readership, which is completely digital in Bangalore.
Pradeep, we have received a number of questions. So
okay, let's go to questions then.
Yeah, yes.
Yeah, I'm fine, because I can go on speaking. I don't want to do that. Thanks.
Okay.
So Praveen, sir,
Subrajit,
you can please proceed. Yes.
yes. So Subrajit Ganguly, he wants to know that what is the influence of an editor in a newspaper? Is there any change in terms of editorial narrative after Shekhar Gupta left Indian Express?
This is a very newspaper specific question, but I can say editor's influence is phenomenal in a newspaper. Editor has huge influence because the editorial policy of a newspaper is driven by the top, by a section of editors, and they are all informed by their own staff. They are informed by their own networks of people. They are informed by their staff. So there is a edit line which the newspaper takes. So that edit line is influenced by the newspaper. Shekhar Gupta's exit hasn't made any difference to the editorial line of the Indian Express. The same editorial line is pursued even till date. So what Shekhar Gupta stood for in terms of his pure editorial policies of, say, speaking truth to power, always questioning institutions, making them accountable, sharp focus on pillars of democracy, on conflicts of interest, on a liberal worldview. I think those views, the editorial views of Express, haven't changed. In fact, they have all strengthened over a period of time.
Okay, the next question is from Ravi Chaturvedi. He's asking, related to Indian Express, in the contemporary news consumption environment, does it make a prudent business sense for print media organization to add social media features to their online service, despite the problems associated with it? What are the experiences of Indian Express?
So I think, as I said, that social media presence is, if you look at Indian Express, it is adopting to social media very vigorously. We are pushing our content across all mediums. Facebook more so. Twitter is anyway a very small universe. Facebook is a huge universe, and I think we are there on Facebook. We're trying to push content on Facebook, and our experience has been more than Facebook. So I think our experience has been that the search sites are the bigger things today. How much traffic you are able to get from search sites, because they still are very dominant. Now you will find that in Australia and in some other countries, they are asking Google to share revenues with the publishers. They are signing individual contracts, like Google is signing individual contracts with media corporations in Australia for revenue share. So I think those things, India still, they have huge clout. I think the Google will have to do certain things. It may have to have individual contracts with news organizations even in India too, because we are providing the content, they are providing links to our content and getting all the ad revenues. I think it is there has to be some bigger revenue share than what just these search engines or social media give us. I think that is likely to change. We'll become more and more proactive to any social media initiative that happens. We'll go more digital. We'll try to match our news content to suit the algorithms of search engines. So those things are always done. There is a tech team which is working. We have got a very big technology team which is always looking at, even there are certain news which are not read by people just because of the headline. So can we tweak the headline so that more readers can come in? So those kind of things are constantly looked at.
Okay, now the next question is from Sambhu Sahu. He's asking, kindly elaborate on the functioning of newsroom during the lockdown. How did the COVID-19 pandemic change news gathering, the editorial process, and printing process?
We were very surprised that that we could do a lot of our production work from our homes. So that was one phenomenal learning experience during this. The Zoom meetings or Google Meets, these became the norm, because we had so many meetings that it was death by Zoom, as you might know, that every 3 hours there is a Zoom meeting. We are trying to connect with people. It was very laborious, because the distinction between home and office collapsed. Home became the office. We were like, as journalists, we were intruding into the space of our families. We were taking away their time. It became very difficult, and we became like 24/7 journalists. But we could also see that we could move to working remote very easily. But I think the culture of an organization, it is very critical for us to meet face to face. In this last 1 year, there have been issues in the organization. I think in every organization, people, I think when you are locked up, I think it messes with your mind. You're not able to step out, you're not able to talk to people, you're not able to meet, you're not able to shop. So that physical proximity with people, with colleagues, stopped. People could become snappy. People were becoming easily irritable. I think those kind of things happened. We kind of managed all of that well, but we also realized that we could bring out an edition remotely as well, as effectively as we could do it offline.
Okay, now the next question is, of late, many news organizations, they have imposed paywall on their content. So how this is affecting, media organization, whether this practice is, a fruitful one or a rightful one? What is your opinion on this?
Rightful to, I think good content should be paid for, and it all depends on whether people, readers pay for it, depending on what you give them. My experience is, you have to adopt to this. So when I say that I need to have a paywall, I am also putting a huge burden on myself. Boss, I have to create such content that people pay for it. There's a huge pressure on me to just upgrade it phenomenally, so that people pay for that plus and for that special and for that extra. So now I can't just give them jo khabar which has happened all through the day. I can't give it to them tomorrow morning. People don't want it. I don't think people want that Jaishankar is going to address the parliamentarians, all political parties tomorrow. I don't think. It has come out on Twitter, it is there on television, ticker has happened all through the day. So in the morning, do you want it to read it on front page? I don't think so. So you have to tell him something more. So for that, I think people might be willing to pay. So I think that 100,000 subscribers, digital subscribers for Express is a great thing if it happens, or when it happens. So I think we need to put it on the paywall, but there is a caveat to that you have to really remarkably give people amazing stuff.
Now the next question is from Akshat Chopra. Though you have addressed, what he's asking, but if you can elaborate. 2 organizations have social media guidelines that allow reporters to express through personal social media handles without drawing reasonable limits on personal commentary.
Yeah, that is a problematic area, which I said, it is a problematic area. You can have guidelines, but the day you have guidelines, it is out there in every news website. Chief editor sends a guideline, and the next minute it is there, and 5 other websites saying they are curbing free speech. This responsibility, this is the responsibility of every journalist to have some sanity in his timeline, in her timeline. You can't. I think a journalist cannot hugely distinguish. I'm very conservative in my mind as a journalist. So I don't think that I can say that I am Vaidyanathan Iyer and deprive myself of Indian Express. No, I can't do that. So I have to be Indian Express outside also. People know me as Indian Express. My sources know me as Indian Express. So can I say whatever I say? No, I don't think so. That's my personal view. That's my organization doesn't have a very strict social media guidelines, because it's best to call the concerned reporter and sensitize him about what he has tweeted, and say that the pitfalls of that. Tell her the pitfalls of posting such stuff. I think that is, to my mind, a better way than having guidelines and then next day everybody pouncing on you and saying that you have curbed free speech.
Shweta Arya wants to know that social media is there and the real journalism is there. Now, the value system, the ethical practices, how these two things, are varying in these two, medium.
I'm trying to grasp the question. Can she elaborate?
The question is talking about social media practices and the journalistic practices, which is bound by ethics, norms, value system. Whereas social media, where they are not verifying the information and simply propagating information.
I think social media is, as I said, anybody can come outside your door and spit and go. You can't do anything about it. But newspaper organizations, they are institutions. Express is a 100-year-old institution. So you have evolved processes of fact checking, of editing, of getting your reporter to tell you show you the documents. I, as an editor, will want to see the documents of the reporter who's telling me that there is such and such document, there's such and such thing written in the document. No, there is a close fact checking, talking to the reporter concerned. I think there are 100 checks before the code of ethics is phenomenal in newspapers like Express. Like it is like, particularly when it comes to wrong reporting, no? So if there's a story about Indian Express, रामनाथ जी गोयनका से किसी ने कहा था कि आपका शिमला का correspondent तो बहुत अच्छा है, बहुत अच्छा काम करता है, and he was thrown out. So Professor Mishra knows about it so well. So how you tackle your outstation correspondents about whom you're not in, say for instance, my job today in Indian Express is all national reporters across the country report to me. I coordinate with all. I'm kind of handling news across India, so I'm in touch with them every day. It consumes my energies like crazy. But you speak to some correspondent for 2 hours for a story which he thinks is a scam and is going to bring down the government, to tell him, boss, kuch nahi hai isme. Matlab, you spend hours and you tire yourself. People say that it's a 8-hour job, 10-hour job. No longer. I think for senior people in journalism, it is a 24-hour job. It is crazy. But then there is no choice. If you have to maintain that level of fairness, accuracy, the work-life balance and all, it sounds so good, but it doesn't happen like that.
Okay, one last question we are taking, though this is more of advice. In order to sustain in the market and continue credible journalism, newspaper may go for crowdfunding journalism in future.
See, this is very personal to me. I always think
an advice Sheikh Mohammed Samir is saying.
Yeah, this has got nothing to do with Express, so I can air my views very freely here. I think journalism is public good, to my mind. It can survive only on philanthropy. I think there has to be, if Jeff Bezos can put, say, $3 billion into the pocket of Washington Post and say, boss, you do whatever you want with your journalists. I would want Azim Premji, a Nandan Nilekani, and a Ratan Tata to create a corpus of 5,000 crore and say, boss, 10 saal aap journalism kijiye. Yeah, in perpetuity journalism kijiye. Where, I don't have a problem about generating revenues. My only thing is public good. If that is my objective, that can happen only with philanthropy. Crowdfunding is, again, I don't know to what extent these are sustainable. And I know of many organizations that we all know of, they are finding it so difficult. politicians are putting so much pressure, or even on small organizations, corporate organizations who are funding some of these ventures. When money has dried up for many of these sites which we know, I don't want to name them, but money is drying up. It is not easy to do good journalism. It is very difficult.
Thank you, Vedi. Thank you for answering all the questions. Back to Mona.
Thank you so much. Pleasure talking to all of you.
Thank you so much, sir. This program would never have been possible, I think, without our mentor, Professor Siddharth Mishra. Sir, I would now welcome you for your remarks.
Thank you so much, Mona, and thank you so much, Vedi. I can say that.
Please do that. Yeah.
I can say that the DNA of Indian Express and of print journalism still runs in your veins. So
Thank you so
and
much.
in these times, it is very difficult to remain with a newspaper and sustain yourself in a newspaper.
Yeah.
And not walk out to the tempestuous world of, I call it tempestuous world of digital journalism and those portals and all that, And then having a fellowship and a following of so many lakhs on Twitter and so many things. So old school good journalism, where people would say that, ye khabar akhbar mein chhapa,
Exactly. Yeah, absolutely.
So that satisfaction can only come from somebody who has worked hard at one's news, who has not got his news from somebody else. And I will talk about Indian Express, but something about when you mentioned something about when you grapple with a reporter, very interesting tidbit which there's a friend of mine who was known to me, was to be Times of India correspondent from a town called Darbhanga on Nepal, Bihar
border. Yeah.
Darbhanga. So he broke that. For him it was a great story that Udit Narayan had a wife from an older marriage, and he broke that story. So Pradeep Buha, who had just passed away, and who had taken over, and he was giving this Filmfare a very big and everything. So he called up that correspondent, and that and just think of it, Pradeep Buha calling up a poor correspondent in Darbhanga, and told him, "ये खबर छापने से तुम्हें क्या मिलेगा पता नहीं, लेकिन उदित नारायण का तो Filmfare Award गया." So that is the power of a print journalist.
Yeah.
You see, and even look at it this way, Times of India, very commercial paper, and Filmfare Award, they are flagship kind of an event. Jab event industry shuru hua, Times of India kind of this thing, and there a print reporter sitting in Darbhanga, in short, Udit Narayan did not get the Filmfare Award that year.
Yeah.
So that is the beauty of print reporting. That is the beauty of factual report hardcore. Now, what an interesting talk and lecture we had, and I read newspapers in hard copy. I even have today's newspaper with me.
Thank you so much.
And I have your sister newspaper.
Sister consider.
Okay, so I read all this, and despite my family, putting all the protocol on me that I will have to keep cleaning my hand and put them on. So, but on this, I want to clear something, and the reporter in me, keeps asking about, the what do you call the survival chances of newspaper industry. My Dubeji, my newspaper hawker, who delivers the newspaper. During the pandemic, when family put a total ban on delivery of the newspaper in the house, all this, for children, it was like, it never mattered to them that, hard copy. So, in fact, then also I told Dubeji that you must bring my copies of the newspaper and carry it to the Radhi or wherever you want to carry. And, you would know this thing. So, but today, Dubeji, his business did, and the man who must have felt the loss of circulation, actually, if you look at it at the grassroots level, would be people like Dubeji, the circulation people, who were like Dubeji had a hawker employed to drop in my apartment and the apartment next door, and somebody else, So, but he is today dropping the papers himself. But what he tells me is that it's on a revival mode. There are people, who would still continue to ask for paper, read paper, and the sheer comfort of reading the newspaper. So there is a chance. And this is what I said yesterday also, that print is not going to die because digital is there. You know, the television came, but print survived. So digital has come, print will survive. If print remains true to its ethos, print will die because of itself. If it starts compromising on news, I'm sorry, print is going to die.
True.
And you see, why do I read a newspaper? Why do I read a newspaper? I don't read a newspaper to, the narrative of the government. I read a newspaper, want to know, I as the head of the news operations would always ask if somebody came with a government project story. I would ask the person, no, scam kiya? Because there cannot be a government project without a scam. There's somebody is benefiting somewhere in something. So that's what. So that if you are losing on that kind of this thing, what you call passion, to find out the scam in the government. As somebody was, somebody, and a lot of, as you rightly said, but then those abuses are also such bouquets, that so many people are actually reading your column and then abusing you and this thing. So that also comes as a bouquet. But then the whole, this narrative which has been spread, to give a bad name to the journalists, why can't you report positive news? Why can't you be positive about the government? This is not journalist's job to be positive about government. Government has a publicity department. Government has a PIB. Every state has an information bureau. It's the government's job to do their publicity, and nobody objects to it.
Yeah.
So
you're right.
All the PROs are very good friends. So why should I be a PRO for the government? That's the whole idea. And why should I be looking for positives in the government? I should look for such positives in the government which their PR department has failed to find out.
Yeah.
And then report that. So, these are things in the newspaper which are, somehow getting lost. I think there is a caution for your newspaper, You were talking about, you are competing with Hindu in getting this Civil Services Institute advertisements. Now, Hindu is a very boring paper, and we should not compete with their space with them. I was
saying that our explanatory journalism
Hindu is sold maximum around JNU and in Mukherjee Nagar area of Delhi, whereas Indian Express has a spread all over Delhi. So you should not compete with space with Hindu. So, it's a very boring paper, and we read Indian Express for Indian Express style of journalism, and yes, it's very nice if people, if aspiring civil servants are reading Hindu, are not reading just Hindu and also reading your paper.
No, I think that is an additional thing which has happened because of our explanatory journalism, which is quite heartening for us. That people read it for stuff where they think that this will be very useful.
Yeah, and maybe I'll tell you what, you're coming to your explanatory journalism. You have, I don't know if it was ever there part of your plan, but it has so happened that if you recall, the All India Radio in the older times, in the saner times, I would say, after 9 o'clock news in night would bring in something called News in Focus. A very good explanation of the issue at the hand would be given, which has stopped. You can do All India Radio scripts are there today on their portal, the news scripts and this thing, and you can go and see for yourself. There is just the what you call press releases there and nothing else there. So with those such programs having lost their space, I think probably your explanatory journalism has come to capture that space, and it is having this. You see, you were very, very correct that you see, whosoever reads, even it should not really. I work very closely with somebody called Ashok, Vinod Mehta. Ashok is brother, Vinod Mehta. And his thing was that we are the second paper. Times of India or Hindustan Times the first paper. So we are the paper by choice. Remember that he is not taking the newspaper कि पड़ोसी ना कहे कि उसके घर को अखबार भी नहीं आता है. तो उसलिए वो हमारा पेपर नहीं ले रहा, वो हमारा पेपर इसलिए ले रहा है क्योंकि वो वाकई पेपर पढ़ना चाहता है. So then so the pressures of advertising would be there. The pressures of advertising would be there, and to compromise on narratives would be there. And then it's very, very challenging to control the what you call journalists not going bonkers on their social media handles. And if you were to do a case study, you see the headlines in all the newspapers on Sunday morning, you all of you, including Indian Express, you talked about the highest rainfall you have had in this city for last, I don't know how many years. And look at what the reporters who were in the field who had to say, that the broken bridges, the deluges, and the, all the everything. So somewhere I'm pretty well versed with the functioning of the government and the kind of thing that happens. So somewhere, if you are, the frustration of, and then again, the government has this thing, that once it, gets one-to-one with the editors and with the owners and this thing, the reporter at ground feels very, very frustrated, and then where does he take out his frustration? The social media has given him that scope to bring out that frustration. So really, to ensure that the reporter does not really go, goes and speaks very loud there. You have to ensure that your newspaper continues to create that kind of noise, that kind of quality noise, for which he has joined your organization.
Absolutely.
That's something which is very, very important. And I know it's very difficult time. Government advertising has become very important. And government is twisting arms. But then again, how you are going to sustain yourself? And as you said, that digital is the way out probably, which is giving you that access. So that has to be, somewhere, these are the issues which, the topic, the social media influences on the newspaper industry. These are the issues, which have to, the people, editors like you have to really take into. I'm so happy that you sent Shubhajit to Kabul. I wouldn't have read the Taliban news otherwise. There was sufficient news in this thing. So, and two people who were in Kabul, Shubhajit and Sonia Sarkar.
Yeah.
They both started their career with me.
Yeah, in Pioneer.
Yeah. So I felt so proud of both of them being there, and writing. Shubhajit is a very, very well-tempered person, so he wouldn't go on social media. He restricts himself to newspaper. Very good news reports, very thorough with his beat and this thing. Sonia Sarkar is the other way around. She is all over the social media and thing. But then that's the way journalists are. Two journalists are the same. As you said in the newsroom, two journalists cannot be same. And these platforms, you really cannot stop. I remember, editor, an editor tried stopping somebody's news in one paper, so he got published in the other paper. So you can always give a byline to a friend in the other paper. So these things happen in the newspaper. But yes, I think that with the long, and you talked about it in so much of detail, the ethos of the newspaper, the fact check. Even when these terms like fact check were not there, but we were still checking on the facts.
No.
This was part of our legacy. We were still checking on the facts. And at the end of the day, when when we talk about this WhatsApp university, so yes, newspapers will continue to hold its position. If you are having a readership of 6,000 in Bombay, in Bengaluru, it is because people are still trusting you and not trusting WhatsApp University.
Yeah.
Yesterday in our presentation, our dean had talked about post-truth era, where everybody wants their opinion to be believed in. Yeah. But I will let me assure you, there are large number of people, large number of people who are who want to really read the other side, the opinion which not match with you. And one last observation about Indian Express, and we talk rather proudly about it, and even Venkaiah Naidu writing, and even so and so writing. A good friend of mine, he has worked with you, he has worked with me, Ashok Malik.
Okay.
He was the one who was to be the right-wing columnist.
Yeah.
So he is out of circulation today, and all the right-wing netas are writing in the newspapers today.
Yeah.
And a reader of Indian Express knows that he cannot be writing this article. There's somebody else doing the ghost writing. So, I think let them write for Times of India or Hindustan Times or wherever they want to write. Indian Express should stick to, the writers, the writers, not the people who are, who are just the bylines and the writer is a ghost.
Someone else,
Someone else. In fact, I have, once in my, I find it very this thing to tweet on. Like nobody really cares, something. Like today, all the newspapers are talking about smog tower set up by Mr. Arvind Kejriwal. It's a smog tower, but it's an anti-smog tower. Even the advertisement says smog tower. Uska press release bhi aa gaya smog tower, and nobody takes up the challenge of saying why it's an anti-smog tower.
Yeah, true.
He's there to kill smog, not to spread smog. He is spreading enough smog. That is another matter. Without even setting up a tower. And a story which I read in today's New Indian Express, the Morning Standard, was a story which I would have wanted to read in Indian Express. That soon after the inauguration and people having left, all the fans stopped working and all the filters stopped working. And when this chap investigated, he found out that all the filters and fans are lying in a truck of Tata, which is the consultant for this thing, and said just some of them were brought in, and it will be another month before they actually become functional. So this is the kind of journalism,
Absolutely, this is going behind the curtains and figuring it out.
Yeah, beyond the by inauguration के बाद क्या हुआ? वो inauguration का photo तो you leave it to television.
That's right.
वो करेंगे. Oh, newspaper will
But
survive.
has to do something else. Yeah,
Yeah, newspaper will survive if it goes beyond the inauguration. Thank you so much,
Thank you so
for
much.
having addressed us today. And it was a
Pleasure.
very, very enriching session. And I admire Indian Express greatly. I've been a ferocious reader of Indian Express. In fact, once I told my editor, the very venerable Chandan Mitra, that the Indian Express did a story like this. So we want to do a story like this. And he said, the editor of Indian Express is not editor of the Pioneer. So you better stick to what your editor is. So that is it. So, and Ramnath Goenka, of course, in fact, I, last year, my very dear colleague, Ravi Chaturvedi, managed to get a copy of that film, New Delhi Times, where Manohar Singh played the dramatized the role of Ramnath Goenka.
Yeah.
So we showed it to our faculty. And so yes, we are pretty beholden to Indian Express way of journalism. Although Caravan says that you are no more journalism of courage, but then they have their own agenda. Thank you so much.
That is social media for me. So thank you.
So thank you so much, sir. I think you always leave the house with a thought to ponder upon. But before we end this session one, I would like to reiterate that Mr. P. Vaidyanathan Iyer has twice received the Ramnath Goenka Excellence in Journalism Award and is also a recipient of Prem Bhatia Award for Excellence in Political Reporting and Analysis. And I'm sure hearing a person of that stature is always a music to the ears. And I believe each one of us has experienced that today. So I once again extend my gratitude to sir for giving us his precious time.